conductive wire, and you were so electric. I had no say when you came so near and just passed right through me.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is back, as is Mitchell McDonald. Today we are talking about the first two Paddington movies, which are the only two we have at the moment, but we've heard there might be a third one on the way, depending on how movies end up happening in the future. But Mitchell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just peachy. I have no idea what day it is. Everything's closed again, still. I don't go outside. I'm excited to talk about the bear.
That about sums everything up on my end, too. What is the outdoors? Only Paddington knows.
I mean, you have weather, so that's something. Jesus Christ. How are people going to listen to this? Who wants to hear me talk after 9 months of just brain rot? I am so sorry, guys, already. I'm so sorry.
Well, before we dive into the movies, I wanted to ask you specifically how you knew about Paddington, because Paddington is obviously like this children's book, and I never had it as a kid. So when these movies came out, it wasn't something that instantly got my attention in the same way that something like, you know, a Scooby-Doo movie or Detective Pikachu did. So for you, what led you to these movies, basically?
Okay. So I saw Paddington 2 first. I did not see Paddington when it was in theaters. I remember when it came out, I remember thinking, oh, that looks cute. I am a young adult. I don't know that I need to watch that, even though it looks cute. It looks very like for kids and like, you know, the type of like cartoony kind of antics. Also, it was kind of that era of a lot of CGI animal paired with live action human man go on journey type movies that are kind of a dime a dozen at that point, you know, and still are. I know you did the Sonic the Hedgehog episode with our friend Becky, so those are still happening. But anyways, so back in 2018, I think, there was a wonderful... That was when we were living in a golden age called Movie Pass was a thing that was happening. And Movie Pass, I was an early adopter of Movie Pass, and it allowed me to go to lots of movies that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise spent money on. So one day, my friend Kelly, friend of the pod, but not yet a guest, but my friend Kelly was like, Mitchell, we got to go see Paddington 2. And I was like, I didn't see the first one. She's like, no, it's gonna be great, we got to go see it. And I was like, okay, I've heard lots of critics saying that this movie is really good, even though I don't know the character at all. I'm not familiar with it. And we go to this movie, we show up like 5 minutes late, so I didn't see like the first couple minutes of Paddington 2 where he's like on the river. I didn't see that part, but not even by the end, by like, we'll talk about this, but one of my favorite sequences in any movie ever now is the pop-up book scene in Paddington 2. By that sequence, I was like, I am all in. I am completely in on this movie. And then I just remember us being like so emotional at the end of Paddington 2 because there's something very emotional happens that is that really tugs at the heartstrings and is just a beautiful, sweet movie. But yeah, so from then on, it kind of became this thing that I showed all of my friends. I was like, you guys, Paddington 2 is the movie. You guys got to get in on this. And they did. It became like a not necessarily like a running joke, but it was like a genuine love that me and my friend group have embraced. So much so that he became like my default like reaction. I bought the stickers. I was reacting to texts with those. I was putting, it's all I talk about on Twitter for a while. He's just a nice bear. We had our bar trivia team, me, Mick, and Nick Ball, also guest and future guest Nick Ball. We're on a trivia team called Paddington Kills, because at one point there was some article that called Paddington 2 Paddington Kills. I think they mixed it up with the sequel to the movie Machete, which is called Machete Kills, is what we think happened. But yeah, our trivia team was called Paddington Kills, and we were really good. And it was that, so that just became it just became this great love and this just thing of joy in a rather not great time for everybody. And I have now watched both Paddington movies multiple times each in quarantine. And yeah, it's they're just really wonderful movies for children of all ages. Paddington 2 has become just I think it's one of the best movies, period. It's one of my favorites.
I will admit, you told me to watch these movies quite a while ago, and I kept putting it off simply because I just had a million other things to watch. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm taking a break in between Lost seasons. I have some time to watch stuff over the weekend. So I watched one night and the other the next day. So getting to experience them that close together instead of having to wait, in between movies like most people do when they first release, I think was a treat because it was almost like watching a little TV miniseries or something. Mm-hmm. And it's like you get one half one night and the other half the next night. So
yeah, that's nice.
That was fun. And, I think we can dive into the first movie here because you mentioned tragic event, which is what we essentially start off with. You have these bears living in Peru, Paddington, not named Paddington just yet. And
no, he's named.
There's this earthquake, which as people from California, you and I can relate to, and it just destroys their home and forces them to seek shelter. But his uncle isn't able to make it to the shelter. And then his aunt goes on to go to this bear retirement home. I'm not 100% sure where it is, but Paddington makes his way to London.
Yes. Aunt Lucy and Uncle Pastuzo have Paddington, and they can all talk because they met this hunter. And but yeah, their home is destroyed in a natural disaster, an earthquake, and Uncle Pastuzo does not make it. And then Aunt Lucy goes to the home for retired bears, and she says Paddington has to go to London and try to find the explorer who met with them because he said there would be a home for him in London. So it's kind of not to already just like decipher these movies too much because they're not that deep, mm-hmm. but it's definitely kind of like an immigrant type story.
Yes.
And it's about finding a home and finding a new family. And there are lots of parts that you could sort of read as being like accepting of people coming from other places to live where you are, and some stuff that you could read like that. But anyways, yeah, he goes to London and he is sitting in Paddington Station, and that is where he meets the Browns, the family that he will spend most of the movie with.
Yeah, and I thought the family dynamic was very fun when we first see them because you have this family with the father who's kind of in a hurry and just wants to get out of the subway station. He's like, there's a bear, don't look, keep going. And his wife then backtracks and goes to the bear and sees, like the little note around his neck. And she's like, oh, okay, what's your name? And starts asking all these questions. And you can see the dad getting frustrated and mm-hmm. you know what's going to happen. She's going to be like, oh, well, why don't you come with us? And, the son is excited about it. The daughter could not care at all. And I thought that was just really fun how when we meet them, you instantly get a feel for their personalities. And then you get to watch over even just the course of this movie, how that changes.
Yeah, they definitely have these are kids movies, but I think that when you really look at them and how much detail and thought is put into the script, the screenplay, the characters, even the acting, I feel like all of them are doing a really good job, because I feel like every character kind of has a little arc. I feel like the arcs are more obvious in the second movie, and they're more like set up and knocked down in a way that is a little bit more satisfying in the second movie. But in the first one they do as well. And Hugh Bonneville plays Mr. Brown, and Sally Hawkins plays Mrs. Brown, and they are very cute together. And it's kind of the main arc of the movie is kind of the like dad doesn't want the puppy but loves the puppy more than anybody kind of story. You know how that goes in real life. Yeah. But the Browns are all, we love them, and they kind of realize the plot of the movie is kind of them realizing that they need Paddington as much as he needs them, sort of. Yeah,
and on another note with the cast, you have Nicole Kidman playing your antagonist.
Yes. So I think I love both of these movies. I think Paddington, the first one, is a little bit weaker because I feel like the element of how they treat him being a bear is kind of, sometimes people are like, oh, that's weird, a bear, but they're never like, oh my God, a bear. It's just like, oh, that's kind of strange. It's like, so it's kind of, it's cute and it's funny, but it's kind of like unevenly. I feel like they don't quite stick that what level of reaction people are supposed to have to him in the first movie. And I feel like Nicole Kidman's character / performance, it feels like it's from a little bit of a different movie, and we can talk more about that. I think she's good in it. I think she's fun, and I think
it's definitely campy though.
She feels a little too like evil for me in this movie. I think it's great, and I still love this movie. It's one of my favorites, but I do feel like she goes a little too, she kills a guy in the middle of this movie is really what I'm dancing around here.
Yeah, and it was funny because I had just watched The Undoing recently, which stars her and Hugh Grant, who then is in Paddington too. And I was just like, I did not plan my week to be like this, but here we are.
This was all unplanned. You just were like, oh, I'm just going to watch all these together.
Well, I had finished The Undoing earlier in the week because the finale had aired on Sunday or something like that, and then I watched these movies the following weekend.
Well, maybe you were just like, oh, well, I just watched The Undoing, now I need to watch Hugh Grant's greatest performance, which is Paddington 2.
And the fact that they both played the villains in each movie, I just thought was really funny, because it's just one of those things where I was like, I did not plan this, but it worked out really, really well, and it was pretty funny. And I do agree with you that there was something a little off with the character, not necessarily her performance of the character. It was just kind of how
quite fit
the character was written.
Yeah, it doesn't 100% like fit as, but I feel like in the second one, Hugh Grant really like it's a perfect fit for what he's doing in that movie. It rocks. We'll get to that.
Yeah, because the sort of twist that we find out is that she is the daughter of the explorer who found Paddington, his uncle, and his aunt.
Yes, spoilers for Paddington. Spoilers for a 6-year-old children's movie that has no stakes. But yes, you do find out that she is the daughter of the explorer, and her father was struck from the Guild of Explorers because he didn't bring back a specimen of these talking bears. So she has this grudge against Paddington and needs to kill and stuff him, which I feel like is a little bit harsh. So she's pulling cartoony antics, trying to get Paddington, trying to find him, and then chasing him around in the third act of this movie. I feel like this movie is really lighthearted. It's very fun. It moves at a very brisk pace. I feel like it is more so than the second one. The first one is really reliant on these kind of not long, but like these scenes of Paddington alone where he has trouble navigating the world that he is not familiar with, whether it is
like
him.
The bathroom scene.
Yes, there's a scene where he is in the bathroom and he sticks the toothbrushes in his ears He drinks a whole thing of mouthwash. He gets stuck in the toilet, and then eventually it floods the bathroom. It's these like kind of Chaplin-esque, like Charlie Chaplin-esque comedy sequences where things go from bad to worse because he is unfamiliar with how a situation works. And I feel like there are several of those in this movie. That's kind of what it, like, the thing you come for, and they are very good and very funny, and I love the way that they escalate. I love in that bathroom scene, like things go so crazy so quickly. There it goes from him like flooding it to he's fighting the shower head with the toilet brush, and there's just so many tiny, just micro scenes that happen in this one scene that really build to this wacky conclusion where he floods their house. And then there's also a lot of other antics. There's a scene where Nicole Kidman's trying to break into the house, and he gets wrapped in tape when he's trying to tape something, and he is sealed in tape, and she blows up their kitchen, basically. Yeah, there are quite a few of those scenes, and they are very good. And they are kind of I would say the main selling point of that film. I feel like the second one has a little bit more to offer than just those, although it does have a couple of those, which are also very good.
Yeah, plus, like you said, the pacing is so good, especially with this first movie coming in at, I think it was like an hour and 35 minutes. It was shorter than I expected it to be, because I know a lot of movies that involve animation tend to be a little shorter just because of how extensive working on animation is, and it's a very, very long process. But because this is a combination of both, I was like, oh, is this going to be something that kind of overextends its stay like a lot of semi-recent movies have done?
Sure.
But it didn't, so that was good.
No, yeah, I think these movies they put like a surprising amount of effort into making sure that everything that's set up in the first act really gets paid off. Like every tiny thing, whether it's jokes or throwaway lines sometimes, or each character's sort of mini arc that they're going through. I think that these are really well made and just exemplary, like film, like kind of like film 101, like how you should make your movie. They are they're both written and directed by Paul King, who was I think his main other thing that he's done is the TV show The Mighty Boosh, which is an English show that I actually haven't watched before, but I know there's a lot of fans of it. But yeah, he wrote and directed both of these films, and I think he did. I don't think he's doing the third one, which is interesting. I know they're developing a third one, but I don't think that he's directing it. He might. I don't know what his involvement will be with it. I'm pretty sure that he is doing. I think he's doing Willy Wonka, is what I think he's doing, but I'm not positive. He may not be working. I think he's doing a Willy Wonka type thing, but I'm not sure. Anyways, but yeah, the first one is very sweet and gives you a great introduction and how kind of the origin of how Paddington comes to London, because I think in the books he is known to be from darkest Peru, lives in London, has the hat, has the coat. They're based on children's books from, I'm not sure what like era they're from, but if you know, tweet at us. But yeah, you did say that a lot of people had him like growing up, but all my familiarity and interactions with Paddington have been as a full adult.
Same.
So, and I love him more than probably a lot of people who loved him as a child. So anyways,
one character we haven't talked about yet is Mrs. Bird, who I wouldn't say is sort of the quiet surprise here, because she can be a pretty loud character, you know, when she is needed, but you don't see her at the beginning with the rest of the family. So she kind of comes in later and you're like, oh, who's this older woman just in the house, in the kitchen all of a sudden?
Yeah, they just have a lady, an older lady who just lives in their house. It isn't really specified what her relation is to the family. It's like she's their grandma, but she's also not. And she's Scottish, I think. And she's delightful.
They did imply that she knew the dad as a boy when she gives Paddington the jacket, though.
Yes, that is true. Wow, we should really get it. We should really have done our research here and gotten into this.
Who is Mrs. Bird?
Yeah, Paddington he gets the hat. His hat is from Uncle Pastuzo. It was his hat originally from the Explorer, and then he gets the coat was handed down through every member of the family to him eventually, and that's how he gets his very iconic hat and coat. He's also, Paddington's design in these movies is great because he's like a CGI bear who's like 3.5 feet tall, but his character is like the perfect amount of cartoony and natural. Like, he looks very at home in this world that they create for him. The world is very bright and colorful and like clean that they make for him in this London, specifically Windsor Gardens, which is where the family lives. But yeah, I do really feel, and they make his face very expressive, and he's very cute and sweet and kind of has puppy dog eyes, but kind of has kid eyes. He's kind of that like SpongeBob kind of age where he's like a little boy, but also kind of an adult too, and also kind of dumb, but also very sweet and also capable. It's kind of like your ideal kind of cartoon character is kind of, he can be very intelligent or not intelligent whenever the plot calls for it. I think after seeing Paddington, I told my friends that he is a superhero. His superpower is friendship, and his weakness is everything.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And to do some live follow-up research here, according to the Paddington Bear Wiki, Mrs. Bird is immortal.
Oh, that
and
actually
a distant
tracks.
relative.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, so there are magical forces at play here.
Yeah, because she has her, clairvoyant knees that tell you what the weather is going to be like.
That's all. This is canon. This is canon, you guys. Mrs. Bird, immortal, can predict the weather. Paddington can definitely talk. It's all there, you guys.
It's all real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also in this movie, Doctor Who simps for Nicole Kidman.
Yes. What's his name? Peter Capaldi?
Yes, he meets Nicole Kidman and decides to help her because he doesn't like that there are bears in the neighborhood and thinks that they're dirty and that they will lead to all kinds of bad stuff happening in the neighborhood, and that's kind of where the immigrant story sort of comes into play.
He's the racist.
Yeah. He's kids movie racist. Yeah.
Right. He's the character the adults will understand.
He also just has a disgusting house in this movie. He's their next door neighbor, and he just has a horrifying looking house that is gross.
Yeah.
Anyways,
his mother's house.
But yeah, it's. Do we have anything else that we want to say on Paddington? You enjoyed the first one. I guess you enjoyed it enough to want to talk to me about it and to watch the second one.
Yeah, I think these movies are both really charming, and the first one does a very good job of setting that up, because at the end of it, it's kind of, left open-ended for a sequel, but you don't really know where the sequel is going to go. And I like when you can't necessarily predict those things. Maybe for people who had read the books or something, they might have known, but I can't imagine too many children necessarily remembering how stories fully played out, because...
Hang on. Deanna, did you not watch till the end of the credits?
I did.
Oh, okay. So you're forgetting the scene where Nick Fury shows up and tells Paddington he's got to join the Bear Vengers. Yeah, it's okay. It's really at the credits are really long in that movie, and it's kind of way at the end, so you may have forgotten. But that does take place, and I'm kidding. Sorry. No, I mean, yeah, it doesn't. There's no obvious setups for a sequel and or a franchise or whatever in these movies. I think it was just a decent sized hit, and yeah, they already did a lot of the CGI and stuff, and obviously the second one, they really got onto something when they made it, because they decided to send him where it goes it goes to prison is where it goes. He goes to jail. In Paddington 2. Paddington 2 is Paddington goes to jail. It's like, okay, he's happy with his family. He's got to go to jail.
Yeah. I want to make one quick note, too, on the first one before we dive into Paddington goes to prison. The budget for this was about, I want to say, $54 million, if this is correct, with the pounds, because this was, a British production, UK production, and it made $282 million at the box office. So to say the first one was successful is maybe an understatement, because that's a lot of money for a kid's movie with a character that hadn't really been around for a while, from what I could tell. Maybe they're still publishing the kids' books. I have no idea, but
according to this, Paddington has been around since the 1950s and has had multiple millions of copies of books sold, and also multiple television shows. So what do we know? So I guess there was a market for it. I mean, you never know when you adapt a book, like if it's gonna be, especially a kid's movie, you never know, but these are wonderful. Anyways.
That's fair. Like I said, I know nothing about Paddington other than these movies.
Yeah.
And this movie didn't turn out to be as terrifying as something like The Cat in the Hat from 2003.
Yeah, it's good they waited, probably.
Because that movie did not do well, if I'm not mistaken. It had a much higher budget. I think the budget was double what Paddington's was, and it only made $25 million more than the budget.
Yeah, there was a while there where CGI just wasn't ready to do a lot of stuff. And there was just, I feel like the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, the aesthetic was just so ugly. Like that movie, and I'm thinking of When the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey version, are just two of the ugliest looking movies I have ever seen. Like, I kind of like the Grinch movie. I don't think it's bad. I think it's pretty funny. I like Jim Carrey.
I think that's become like a sort of cult classic for the holidays.
Yeah, I think it is a movie that you watch on Christmas, but it is ugly. It is not good to look at. It is a very not good looking movie. No. And I mean, sometimes that works and that's fine, but that's an ugly movie. And these movies are very nice looking and we love them.
Yeah. Well, time for Paddington Goes to Prison, also known as Paddington 2, because they obviously couldn't title it that and give everything away.
I think maybe it was called that in like Russia. I think it might have been called that there in the translation. I think it was maybe
they just went for it.
Yeah, maybe it might have been that there. I'm not positive. I haven't watched that version of the movie, but Paddington Goes to the Gulag. Anyway, the second movie is, it's got most of the cast returns except Nicole Kidman is replaced by, as we said earlier, Hugh Grant, playing Phoenix Buchanan, the villain of the film.
And not necessarily replaced, they just went with another villain.
And also Brendan Gleeson plays Chef Knuckles McGinty.
Yeah.
He's the chef of the prison that Paddington goes to and helps reform. Paddington reforms. So Paddington is, in this movie, is trying to buy his Aunt Lucy a birthday present. And gets his eye, this pop-up book in the antique shop catches his eye, and there is this absolutely wonderful sequence where it's sort of like it's like a CGI sequence where it transports us into this popping book, as they call it in the movie. And it's him giving Aunt Lucy a tour of London. And the pages are like folding in on themselves, and they're like running through these paper characters, and everything, like people and cars are zipping by. And it's just like, it is one of my favorite sequences in any movie. And it makes me full of just joy and happiness and warmth, and kind of brings tears to my eyes, like honestly, like completely honestly, whenever I watch this movie. And it's so early. It's like maybe 10 minutes in, maybe not even, it's like 5 or 10 minutes into this movie that the sequence happens, and every time I'm not expecting it, and it just gets me, man. What did you think?
Mitchell, I have to make all of the Stephen King comparisons that I can because I also host a Stephen King podcast. So Brendan Gleeson is in the Mr. Mercedes TV series. He is the main character of the series, which is, he's also the main character in the Stephen King books. So I just wanted to point that out. And, it's funny. We have quite a few Harry Potter connections too, because he played Mad Eye, and Aunt Lucy is voiced by Imelda Staunton, who was one of the professors, whose name I am blanking on, Professor Umbridge, I believe.
Oh, I didn't know that. I did not recognize her because she is a bear. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I recognize this person. Yeah. She's Professor Umbridge. I remember. Yeah. We hate her. We love her in this. But yeah, that sequence is wonderful. But then Hugh Grant's character, Phoenix Buchanan, needs the book and steals it because there are clues in the book. It's very complicated, so that he can go on this treasure hunt to find this secret fortune that was stolen from his family, I think.
Wasn't the fortune tellers?
Yes, it was the fortune tellers, and his dad tried to steal it. Sorry, we're really getting into this. It was the fortune tellers. His dad tried to steal it. He didn't successfully steal it, but he's trying to finish what his father started so that he doesn't have to make dog food commercials anymore, where he has to just dress up like a dog and eat dog food, because his acting career, he's sort of washed up. So he does just this insane performance where he is sometimes monologuing to himself and all his other characters that he's played on the stage and screen. There are sequences where he is dressing up and disguising himself as other characters so that he can find these clues in various picturesque locations around London. And Paddington gets framed for stealing the pop-up book, goes to prison. First, it seems like he's not going to fit in. He inadvertently dyes everyone's prison uniforms pink, gets in a fight with Brendan Gleeson as the chef, who he says his food is disgusting. And then when he's about to get pummeled by Chef Knuckles, he, as a defense mechanism, shoves we haven't even talked about marmalade up until now, but Paddington always has a marmalade sandwich, and he's obsessed with marmalade, and he always it's all he eats. And so he inadvertently throws a marmalade sandwich into Knuckles McGinty's mouth, and Knuckles is enraptured by it and says, "Hey, we have to serve this." And then they strike up a friendship, and they basically reform the prison and make it a very beautiful and kind and sweet place for friendship and reform. And there are bedtime stories, and there are cakes and dancing and flowers, and it's very sweet. Also, Paddington is followed around by a calypso band that in the sequence in the film and in sequences in the first film, it sort of gives you his internal monologue or where he's at in the film, and they help to punctuate that sequence as well in the movie. Yeah. Do you have any other thought? Basically, Paddington escapes from prison. They break out of jail, and it leads to this confrontation on a train with the Browns.
Let's backtrack a little and focus on how he and Knuckles basically became good enough friends for Knuckles to basically be like, "Hey, Paddington, we're going to escape. You want to join? We need a fourth person." And I think they do a lot of build up with their relationship, because when he goes to have Paddington make the marmalade, he's reluctant to help. And then Paddington just annoys him so much to the point where he is just like, "Okay, I just need to help this little bear, because otherwise he is going to take a million years to do this, because he basically went to pull down, the sacks, and there were so many of them that they just all came tumbling down, and Knuckles was like, take one at a time. And he was literally taking one piece of fruit at a time.
One orange.
Instead of one entire sack. So he's, walking back and forth with one orange every time. And you're just kind of like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
He's not the smartest bear out there, but he's trying, Mitchell. And I think that's what counts. And from there, you see the two of them getting along better and better. And you even have the visitation scene where the family comes to visit, and Paddington brings all his friends, and you have Mr. Brown, who thinks he has muted himself, but he turned the light off instead.
Yes,
and he starts talking about the prisoners, and they're just like, we can still hear you, right? You turned the light off. And it's just something that is so easy to understand how it could happen, but yet it's still so funny.
I really like in that scene, my favorite thing is to watch the expressions of the prisoners as he shit talks them to their faces. I really, the acting that's happening with that entire ensemble is just really, all the comedic timing and performances in these movies are so sharp. Like, I feel like pretty much every joke lands.
Yeah.
They are so funny. Like, they're not just like for kids funny, they're for adults funny. Like, I think it is funny.
I found myself laughing very hard at things that probably shouldn't have been as funny as they were, but because of the timing, I just could not stop laughing because, if we fast forward a little to the escape, you have the three guys, one of them being Knuckles, and I'm blanking on the other two characters' names right now, but they basically get this plane that they're going to flee the country on. And Paddington is like, oh, you're not going to help me clear my name. So he feels very betrayed in this moment. And the criminals are just kind of like, well, we're going to just go with Knuckles because he's Knuckles. And, he's kind of like this big intimidating guy. And it isn't until later when Paddington is on the train trying to get the pop-up book, and you see how things kind of change for Knuckles, and they do end up going back and helping Paddington because they kind of get this feeling that he's going to be in trouble. You can tell, he's not the most street smart.
Yeah, safe bet there for sure.
And everything that happens with the train scene, it's not even just one scene. It's like the whole segment of the movie.
It's the third act, yeah.
Yeah.
This train sequence.
You have, Jonathan.
Jonathan's arc in the movie is that he really likes trains, but trains aren't cool for kids, so he's reinventing himself as like
J-Dog.
As like a I don't even know what like a very hip like EDM sort of kid, I guess, would be what it is.
Yeah.
So he wears like the big, like a big neon hoodie and like a big snapback. And yes, but he helps them like basically hotwire the train so that they can chase Hugh Grant's character, who is on the train trying to get the treasure. And then you have Mr. Brown. He's going through, his arc in the movie is that he's going through a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And he does yoga, and he's trying to recapture a certain part of himself that has sort of died. And he is able to do the splits at one point, and he also is able to regain his youthful prowess of being somebody who can throw balls at a carnival really well.
He's trying to relive his glory days.
Yeah, he does that. Mrs. Brown is a swimmer, and she swims down to save Paddington from a watery grave.
And they set all of this stuff up very well.
Very early in the
because
movie.
It happens so early that you kind of forget about her whole, swim to France thing. And then as soon as she hits the bridge that she's going to jump off of into the water, you're like, oh yeah, you know, they're circling back to this thing that they briefly mentioned in passing earlier on. And the way that they tie all of those things together at exactly the right time is, I think, what kind of puts the second movie over the first one.
Yeah. I think that plus the Hugh Grant performance for me is really what...
His is campy, but the character is the kind of character that it makes perfect sense for. He's this performer. He's, you know, part of the, I guess you wouldn't call it the circus, but, you know, they're at the fairgrounds and he's putting on a show. And so for his personality to kind of remain the same on stage and off, that felt a little more believable than I think what we saw with Millicent in the first movie.
Yeah. Nicole Kidman's character is a little bit more evil, I want to say.
Yeah, it's like you were a little girl when this happened and you just want revenge on a bear. Like,
it's a little more far-fetched. Yeah. I mean, Hugh Grant's character, it's not that he's like grounded or anything, but I mean, you totally get him as like this self-obsessed, washed up
his motivations make more sense.
His motivations make more sense. And just the performance is so funny and sharp and dynamic. I truly think he should have gotten an Oscar won an Oscar for that role. I know that the movie kind of came out at like a time where it was sort of out of Oscar winning, but it's true. It's one of my favorite supporting actor performances of all time, I think. And the movie, it's like I said, it's like screenwriting 101 is how everything that is set up very early and kind of written off comes back, and every character has like a tiny arc, and every character has this happy ending where they are fulfilled. Even Hugh Grant's character gets caught and goes to jail, but then the credit sequence is him performing this huge blowout, wonderful dance number at the prison and just having a grand old time there. So it's just a lovely movie. It's one of my favorite comfort watches. It always makes me laugh. It always brings just abject, unadulterated joy and happiness to me. And just Paddington is really just a character. His mantra is, if you're kind of polite, then the world will be right. And I think that is a very English, but a very sweet thing to have and to just have in the back of your mind. And I think we could all use a little bit more of that, especially when we live in hell and the world is actively capsizing around us. And I think people could afford to be a little bit kinder and more polite to each other and thoughtful. And I just, maybe I'm out on a limb here.
Everyone needs to watch Paddington and everything will be okay.
Yeah, you do. I do think that they are movies that even if you're like, oh, that's for kids, that's dumb, that's goofy, I don't think this is going to be for me. I think everyone would at least think that they're nice and cute. And I think you could do a lot worse with your hour and a half, your hour and 45 minutes than watching these movies.
Yeah, because they didn't make the second movie too much longer. It's about 10 minutes longer, I want to say. And you have so many more comedic moments in this one, I feel like, because a lot of it is the setup for Paddington and him getting to the Browns' home. And, you know, you probably have a good 15 to 20 minutes of that stuff where he's just trying to get settled in. But here he's comfortable. He, you know, can go to the antique store by himself and look for a gift for his Aunt Lucy. And you have, you know, Mrs. Brown breaking into Phoenix's house and her husband coming over in his robe, basically. And then you have Phoenix coming home and you have that whole thing that is just so comedic. And there's not only just, you know, jokes being said, but there's quite a bit of physical comedy as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have one particular moment on the train where Phoenix does know Mrs. Bird's name And you kind of have this standoff between the two of them, and he grabs, like this sort of long sword off of the wall, and she grabs this gun, and he's like, oh, that only shoots darts. And so she shoots it to make sure, and it just like sticks to his forehead, because it's not like a dart, it's like a dart with a rubber end on it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he tells you it's coming, basically, it was one of those moments that I just couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, there's so many good bits in this movie, man. It's so good. The sequence where Paddington is sort of in a fight with Knuckles, or he's about to be, and the warden is like on the phone, and he's like calling the infirmary. He's like, send a nurse, and then as it gets worse, he's like, you better call a priest, actually. Yeah. There's also the two visual physical comedy sequences. One where Paddington is he gets a job as a haircutter's at a barber shop.
Okay, yeah,
He's a barber's assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And that is another one of those sequences where things just go insanely badly for him. He ends up shaving shaving a streak down a judge's. He shaves a judge's head, sticks marmalade to it, ties them up.
The same judge who oversees his case.
Yes. See, everything is connected in this movie. It's very tight.
And he was on the train. It's great.
And he's then on the train. It comes back so he sets himself up for failure very early on in the movie by screwing up this judge's hair, who then is the judge that sentences him to prison, and then ends up being the judge that's also on the train later. And then there's also a wonderful sequence where he is washing the windows of his neighborhood, and he uses this very cute crank shaft ladder and he's sort of going up and down. It's very fun. It's very well done. I love him so much. He's my best friend. He's I love these movies. And also this movie has like a really sweet message about, I think it was kind of an anti-Brexit movie at the time, was kind of the idea, but it's just about like how these members of the community are valuable, and how because Paddington essentially brings together his entire neighborhood and allows them to, like in the first movie, it's more about the family, but in this second movie, it's more about the neighborhood around them, and how he is just this force that brings
He's like a pillar
joy.
of the community.
Exactly. He brightens everyone's day, like in sequence. He helps everyone in the community, and they all love him, and he's like valuable to them. And like taking him away and throwing him in prison, it leaves this huge hole where people they're not as happy, and they don't engage, or they're forgetting things, or they're not studying, or they're not remembering stuff. It's really, I feel like it's not as obvious of an allegory, but I think it is just as good of a message in a movie. And but yeah, it's free Paddington. He did nothing wrong.
Yeah, and I love how the parrot knew who did it.
The parrot does know. Yeah, there is a parrot in the neighborhood that does know that Hugh Grant is guilty very early on.
Trust the animals.
Oh yeah, there's an incredible sequence where Paddington's chasing Hugh Grant while riding a dog named Wolfie.
Yes.
And then he's flying a goose or a swan. It's wild. There's a wild chase sequence. Yeah, there are so many, like, I don't think we've touched on visually. These movies are really well done. There are lots of very wonderful visual flourishes. In the first one, there is a scene where it shows the house that they live in, like a dollhouse, and each character is in their respective rooms as they're kind of talking about their deals. There is many like Rube Goldberg type machines in these, like in the first movie, the first sequence where they have like their tree houses, and they're creating marmalade in the jungle, and they have all these machines that they've created. There's also the prison escape sequence is amazing.
Yeah, the hot air balloon.
Where they not only like the hot air balloon, but where you see them kind of walk through, like they get up, and the prison is like a dollhouse, and they get up and they go through the prison, and sort of like tracking. It's like a sideways tracking shot, and it's sort of following them through all these rooms and up and down, and him through this clock and all these gears. But and then of course the pop-up book sequence is amazing. It's sort of I've seen people compare it kind of to the Wes Anderson. I don't know if you've seen how many of I know you saw Moonrise Kingdom because you got the Criterion of it.
I have not watched it yet, but I will.
Oh, all right. Well, let me know if you think Paddington and Paddington 2 have Wes Anderson stylistic flourishes. Let us know.
I did watch, what was it, Fantastic Mr. Fox, though?
Okay.
So I definitely see what you're saying, because they do a lot of that stuff when they are underground, when they're in their home. And yeah, I definitely see what you're getting at, though.
Yeah, I think that's what people have sort of compared it to. And yeah, I just think they are, it's just, you want, when you see something that has just been executed on this level, even if it's entertainment for children, it just, something you gotta give it up. You really do, because they're just wonderful, and they are one of the few good things out of the past few years. No,
yeah, and I will note, I didn't keep putting these off because I thought they were kids' movies. It's just I didn't have that sort of attachment to it. So I was like, okay, it's one of those things I'll get around to. And I am very, very glad that I watched these. And I definitely understand your love for them, because I know you've watched each one probably at least, 5, 6, 7 times?
Yeah, we're getting up there. We're for sure getting up there with especially Paddington 2. I've watched so many times. I'm flipping through. I have they made the pop-up book from Paddington 2, and you can buy it, and I've been flipping through it as we've been having this conversation. it brings me a lot of happiness.
Yeah, and obviously we have to mention the end where, because Paddington had done so much for the community decided to give back to him, and basically they all paid to have his Aunt Lucy come to London. And that moment was so, so good, because Paddington is not really aware enough to know what's about to happen, but we see it coming. As soon as they're kind of like all there, and they're like, oh, we got you something.
And he's really sad because he has been rescued from this watery grave and been in a coma, and he thinks he's missed Aunt Lucy's birthday, but in reality, they have all come together to bring her to London. And just the build up in this scene, the way it builds to this climactic moment of Aunt Lucy being at the door and giving him this big hug after he spent this whole movie just anxiously dreading like how he's going to get this pop-up book for her and how he's going to miss her birthday and how important it is to him. And just that moment is the emotions in it are so wonderful, and so like as emotional as any genuinely like emotionally affecting sad movie. I feel like the climax of Paddington 2 is just perfectly executed.
Yeah, and I know before we started recording here, I told you we could talk a little about what we think might happen with Paddington 3, because between the first and the second one, it's not like the second one followed immediately after the events of the first one. So I'm not 100% sure that they would do that for the third movie, because while it would be really fun to see Paddington and Aunt Lucy going all around London and stuff, they kind of do that at the end there, where you already know where he's going to take her.
Yeah. Well, I think of it as you've already seen what they're going to do because it shows you in the pop-up book sequence early on in the movie. So you've already seen the trip they're going to have, but it's giving it to you in this way that you're like, oh, this is a great fantasy sequence. But then it comes true at the end. And that's what makes it, that's part of what makes the impact of that scene so emotional and beautiful, is because you've already, experienced this, but it's like, now it's going to happen for real and they don't need to show it to you,
So then it makes me wonder, okay, does Aunt Lucy move in?
Maybe. I think it's
the attic's not that big.
Yeah, I don't know if they have room for her. I feel like if they do a third one, it would have to. I don't know. My thinking is that it is Paddington needs to go on his own and form his own family, maybe. So I've seen a lot of people being like, Paddington gonna get a girlfriend, and I'm like, I saw people pitching that Phoebe Waller-Bridge should be his girlfriend if that happens. But I don't know if Paddington needs to fuck. I don't know if there needs to be a girl bear for him. I don't know. But there is a wonderful article from Brian Grubb on uprocks.com from last month where he ranks potential future villains for the Paddington movies.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so I can throw a couple of those at
Go
you
for
if
it.
you want.
I have not read this article.
There are 20 people on this list.
That's a lot.
The first chunk are your Jeremy Ironses, your Christian Bales, Colin Farrell, and then you got some ladies, Vanessa Kirby, Amelia Clark, Karen Gillan, Daniel Radcliffe. Would be very fun. Love Daniel Radcliffe. He was just on Hot Ones. He's one of my favorite actors. He's English. Be fun. Margot Robbie. She's always good.
Yeah.
The Gallaghers. The Gallagher brothers are on here. That's kind of fun. That's not gonna happen.
No,
but,
it's not.
Then the top 10, we've got Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy, Daniel Kaluuya, too scary. I don't know if you've seen Widows, but too scary. Helen Mirren, very, very stately. She's fun. Jason Statham, also probably too scary / intense for that. Top 5. Helena Bonham Carter, obviously easy. Kind of maybe too similar to Nicole Kidman in the first one, maybe a little too.
Yeah, she could bring her own thing to it, though, I think, for sure.
Yeah, then we've got, of course, Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton could, sure. There's any number of, she'd probably have to be playing twins, I'm guessing, in that, or multiple roles. She would have to be Paddington's girlfriend and the villain. I don't know. Idris Elba would be, they're pitching a lot of intense people. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if Idris Elba and Cillian Murphy and Jason Statham and Daniel Kaluuya, those guys are kind of intense for Paddington. And then we got Olivia Colman, and sure, that'd be great. Love her. She hasn't been in the franchise yet. And then their number one pick, and this has its own, a whole own article, is that Tom Hardy is the number one choice to play a Paddington villain.
That would sure be something.
Though he would have to be wearing a mask of some kind.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's in his contract that he does have to do that. So that would be very fun. Paddington. I say. Sorry, I'm not gonna. I can't do voices. I famously and shamefully cannot do voices. I'm not gonna do my Bane voice.
That sounded like the Bane from the Harley Quinn animated show. So
I tried watching that show. I don't know if it's for me. I'm not sure.
That's okay. Paddingtons are for you.
Yeah, there is also a Paddington animated show on Nick Jr. I haven't checked it out yet. I've heard it's cute. A little younger skewing, as probably is, as everyone would be aware of. I'm like, yeah, it's a Paddington thing. It's not like for adults though. Like these movies are obviously no. It's for children. It's for what these movies are for, which is children.
Yeah, well, we definitely all have so much to think about as to who will be the villain in Paddington 3, but I think it's safe to say that it might be a bit before we see that movie.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I haven't seen anything other than they are developing it, but I haven't seen like who's directing it, if it's in production or not, if anything is known about it. Mm-hmm. I just know that they have greenlit it, but it could be a while. It really could be, especially if, like, I think Paul King really was kind of the mastermind on these, and if he's out, that's gonna be some big shoes to fill in terms of making future movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mitchell, these were really fun to watch, so thank you for telling me to watch them multiple times until I finally did. I am so glad that you finally did, and I am so glad to add another person to Team Paddington. I hope that if one other person watches these movies based on this podcast, my heart will be so full. Well, you'll have to be back on whenever Paddington 3 comes out. Hopefully I'll still be doing this podcast then. We will do it release day. We will hit the midnight screening, and we will do a live immediate reaction podcast review of P3.
Yeah, you can bet on that.
I'll hold you to that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, everyone, that does it for this episode of Welcome to Geekdom. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so through our Patreon. You can sign up for $1 a month. That'll get you a thank you on the show. $2 a month, you get to pick a topic that myself and a guest will discuss on the show. For $5 a month, you can join the Welcome to Geekdom Slack group, where you can talk to myself and various guests who have been on the show. If you want to follow us on socials, you can do so at GeekdomPod on Twitter and at Welcome to Geekdom on Instagram and Facebook. And as always, thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.